Okay, welcome to day 14. Today, for the first time, we're doing it in the evening where we had to turn all our lights on. Okay, so this is day 14 of our YouTube live challenge. Uh, Halfway through, almost halfway through, where every day for 30 days we talk about different business markets, different business trends, different opportunities. And yeah, please, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, please like this video, please click on the notification button. Today's episode is going to be about the space tech industry. I'm really excited about this one, and we're actually going to go deeper in the future as well. And we're doing the episode today because we spoke to a couple of people from the space industry today itself. So it's fresh in our minds. So we thought, might as well, let's do an episode today. So the space tech industry, I am a huge space and science fiction nerd. I love it, and I was the one between the two of us, Siddharth and I, who really pushed for the space industry uh, deep dive. So, why have we picked the space industry to investigate? The reason for that is because right now there are so many new space companies that are coming up. There in the Forbes 30 under 30 list, which came out a couple of weeks ago, there was one company called Pixxel, which had Aves and another guy from the co-founder, I forgot his name. And there are many other really, really interesting space companies, very young founders doing amazing things. We're going to talk about them later on, who else is doing what. Yeah,
I
so
have a
that,
question.
yeah.
Why suddenly? Why are all these companies coming up suddenly?
Siddharth, you're also sitting in a dark hole. You might want to stand up. Anyway, why are all these space companies coming up now? The reason is because the government kind of changed the way that space is regulated a couple of years ago. I believe it was in 2019, as per our conversation. Earlier, there was no regulation which really said that hey, a company can operate in space or that a company cannot operate in space, right? It was just kind of a gray area. And nobody will invest a significant amount of money in this segment if the laws are not clear, because a VC will not fund a startup, and somebody who has a lot of money will not put that money into this segment. And space is expensive, right? You have to invest 1 million, 2 million, $10 million or even more, which is like crores and crores and crores of money in order to even take a small step into space. Just to give a couple of numbers, as per our conversations with people, a normal satellite with which you can do some Earth observation will cost you about $2 million, which is about 15 crores. And if you want to really get customers all around the world, you will need a constellation of these satellites, about 30 of them. So that means $60 million. That means about 450 crores. That's a lot of money. And you will not put in that money unless the regulations are clear. Number two, it has become a lot cheaper to operate in this space. Because of companies like SpaceX and because of other companies, the cost of sending material into space has become much, much, much cheaper. So earlier, even ISRO, even Soyuz, which is the Russian launch vehicle, used to charge around $20,000 to $25,000 per kilogram of material that you wanted to send into space. SpaceX charges only $5,000 per kilogram. So $20,000 is around 15 lakhs. So 15 to 20 lakhs per kilogram. That is really expensive. $5,000 is about 3.5 lakhs, which is much cheaper. It's much more affordable because when you're talking about small satellites, that's around 20, 30, 40 kilos, right? So 20 kilos multiplied by 3.5 lakhs, so about 70 lakhs just to send it into space. And then also remember, you have to spend a lot of money in building it. But all of these components have become cheaper. You can buy a lot of components off the shelf. You don't have to do all the R&D yourself. You can go to SpaceX and you can ask them to launch for you. It'll be a lot cheaper. Even
So,
ISRO, sorry, last thing, even ISRO offers its testing facilities to you so that you can test your components at their facilities instead of investing tens and tens of crores in building up your own testing facility. Yeah, Siddharth.
so, I think it's important for our listeners because I know you are a space nerd and you know all of this like back of your hand. But when I got into this, it was important for me to understand what this entire value chain is about, right? Like what really happens when we talk about space technology, right? So to just throw some light, because now I've learned it from the people that we spoke to, it's basically sending satellites up into space, and there are different kinds of satellites. There's obviously the communication satellite, which is how you and I sort of talk. Then there's the internet satellite, where Starlink, OneWeb are doing, internet using satellites. And then the other one is Earth observation, which is taking pictures of the Earth and then using that data in different forms. To give you an example, let's say you take a picture of a large farm in somewhere from Earth, because it
Indoor.
can be indoor.
Indoor is full of farms, right? It's farmland.
Yeah, sure. So let's say indoor, like farms in indoor, right? If you take a picture from these satellites, you'll be able to figure out what are the soil conditions, if there is a pest attack or not, bunch of other things that is not possible through human eye or through technologies that are present on Earth today, right? So these are the three broad categories of what can you do once you put a satellite. And now if you think about businesses, there are businesses in terms of putting the satellite up there, manufacturing the satellite itself first, what it takes to manufacture a satellite, different components, all of that. The rockets that are used to actually launch the satellites and put it up there. Then you need a ground station to actually communicate with the satellite up there. The data that's received from this ground station needs to be processed analyzed in a way where it's useful for businesses. So there's a software angle right there. All of this, there's a services angle where people who don't understand a lot of this, you can sort of help them understand how to use space image. So there are a bunch of businesses that are happening in the space tech industry. And what Sahil was saying earlier, before the government law, only ISRO was allowed to do all of this primarily, right? Legally, everything, no gray area. ISRO was the one who was doing this. Nobody else. Everybody else in this industry was somehow connected to ISRO, either supplying to ISRO, doing some kind of services or products to ISRO. But now that entire gamut is completely opened up, where it's free reign, right? It could technically, you could have companies completely focused on the private sector, not to do anything with the government sector at all. Technically, I don't think we are there yet.
Yeah, across the world, and especially in India, but across the world, the government is about 80% of the revenue of the space industry.
As of today.
As of today. In India, that'll be even more. In India, it'll be probably 90, 100%.
Yeah, but that's where the opportunity is. That's the trend that we are seeing, is a lot of private players are start going to use this data in some form.
So now I'm going to go into who are those private players. So starting with what Siddharth mentioned, the different types of satellites. So communication satellites, okay, there are many. So all your big communication companies you can imagine, they all have satellites up there. Tata Sky is literally communicating with some kind of satellite up there, right? Because that's why it has that dish. But now moving slightly down, again in the internet space, Airtel, I don't know how many people know this, but Airtel bought 50% of a company called OneWeb, based in the UK, along with the UK government. They paid $500 million for this. And OneWeb is all about providing internet access to people across the world. It is a direct competitor to the Starlink project by Elon Musk. Okay, now who are the startups in this space in India? So now talk about Earth observation, like you mentioned, Siddharth. Number one is Pixxel. I don't know any other Earth observation businesses in India, but Pixxel is doing hyperspectral imaging. Basically, they are doing imaging not just in the visible spectrum, but across many different spectra. And based on that, they're able to see many different things, like what Siddharth mentioned about seeing how agriculture is going, etc. Okay, so number one is Earth observation, and that's Pixxel working over there. Launch vehicles. There's a company called Agnikul that's doing that. In fact, I got interested in the space industry in India because of Agnikul. I started seeing so many articles about Agnikul. I was like, I have to talk to the founder, but I have not been able to yet. If anybody can connect me with him, please do it. But Agnikul is doing really cool work. They are making micro launch vehicles for satellite launches, basically. So that's launch vehicles. Internet space, like I mentioned, there is Airtel who's doing it, but there's also another company called Astrom. Then there's also contract manufacturing. So there are a couple of companies in there. There's one called Bellatrix and there's one called Dhruva Aerospace. They were both started around 2017, 2018. So they're a bit older than these other ones. Then, like Siddharth mentioned, downstream. Downstream, there are many businesses. So all of the stuff we mentioned so far is more upstream and midstream. And then everything else down is called downstream. Downstream, you have all your data collection, you have your data analysis. I was shocked when I read this. AWS and Google are some of the biggest players in the space industry because all that data has to be stored somewhere. And that's stored on AWS, it's stored on the cloud. So yeah, this is what's going on.
There's a company called Kava Space, which is practically doing space SaaS, which is using the data and presenting it in a form that is usable for businesses. And that's where I think that's where one of the biggest opportunity is right now. Not biggest, but the lowest hanging fruit, easiest to get into if you want to get into this space, this industry, is figure out the software angle of it, right? There's a lot of open source data that NASA gives out that, you can find it through different governments and NASA giving out open source data. Can you use this data, process it in a form and sell it to businesses? That's where a lot of opportunity value can be created in the short run. And then once you establish yourself, you can go backward integrate and put your own satellites and all of that stuff, right? So
this space, the software industry is the quickest way for you to enter the space technology industry right now, anywhere in the world. You can do data analysis or create software for any company around the world. Another way to enter this business is by component manufacturing for some private players. Not as easy as it sounds, because I think you'll have to talk to a lot of people before you can get into it. I myself had tried this. I had looked at some ISRO tenders, but this is another way that you can get in if you are looking for opportunities in the space industry.
Yeah, and to your point, Sahil, as you mentioned, I think it's difficult to get in, but higher barrier to entry basically means that if you get in and if you establish yourself, it's not like anybody can pop in and manufacture those components tomorrow, right? So you have that competitive advantage going for you if you are able to enter this industry.
Yeah. So I am super, super, super optimistic about this industry. I am so excited to see the Indian industry compete at the global level, because how many other space superpowers are there? There's the US, there's China, there's Russia. That's about it. The Europe, sorry, how can I forget Europe? And Japan to a certain level as well. The JSA does some cool stuff. But India has a legitimate chance at becoming a space superpower if more private people enter this industry, and if we're able to build the entire supply chain and come up with really innovative solutions to the space industry. I am excited, and I am really excited for the whole space tourism thing to get much cheaper. I can't afford the $250,000 tickets that are being sold right now. That's around 3-4 crores. I can't afford that. But if it gets to an affordable level, you can see old Sahil floating around in space and having fun. But yeah, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are doing a 30-day challenge. Today was day number 14, and I hope you really